Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Jason, the creator of I Am Legion for Dying Light 1 and 2, and I'm here with another episode working on the 1.1 update, which thank you guys again so much for your continued support. I know I say that a lot, but really if I didn't have the community behind me on this, I probably wouldn't be working as long as I do on this project. So thank you guys again. So what I'm going to be working on today is kind of talking about some of the major updates here and what I've been working towards and kind of what I've discovered in the game that is kind of driving a lot of this. A lot of players have been asking, why I focus in on that very specific thing, on armor, on character creation, that kind of thing. And it's because they created a game that was RPG driven as a component, but then it feels kind of incomplete. And there's a lot of things that I found inside the system that kind of lends to where the game could be a lot better. And so I've been working pretty hard on that. So let me show you guys kind of what I've been doing and what I've been working through. So I do have the Discord server going. I will be watching the YouTube channel as I continue to develop here. And if you guys have any questions, I'll be looking out on those channels. So let me make sure I got the Discord where I can see it, and the YouTube chat where I can see that as well. And let's go ahead and get started. So for those of you that are new to the modding and these live streams, so in the top left I usually have the actual extracted files. In the bottom left I have the mod as it continues to roll, and that is hooked up to Git, so you can follow my progress on Git and actually see the work that I'm doing daily. And then over here on the right, I have the actual source folder and then the launcher for Steam. And then now I've learned a new trick, which is to leave that Data3 pack just open, and I can dump those files immediately and continue to test. So testing is pretty much the major thing that slows down this type of update, is that there's so many little things that you can do wrong here. So it's very tedious, but I think the payout is actually very interesting. Hey Verdi on YouTube, thanks for jumping in. Good to hear from you. If you have any questions or anything, shoot me a message on here. I am going to try to keep a little bit more heads down. So usually I do the live mic. There has been a lot of changes in the last couple of months. So I was doing the Discord for a long time there, and Discord as a platform is very useful, but I actually found out that it's gotten very expensive with their server boost system. They basically hide a lot of their main features for the Discord servers unless you pay. I was paying like $35 a month just to get that, to a point where I could stream out and that kind of thing. And that was great for the community, but can't be doing that for too many months. I don't want to buy multiple copies of the game while working on the game. And so because of that, I am going to try to switch more over to the YouTube stream. Hey Mohammed Sahabi, thanks for jumping in. Good to see you back on here. Sorry for the delay. It's been a while since I've been on here. So let me go ahead and dive in and just kind of show you guys what I've been working on here. So kind of the idea is that they have hundreds of different, and yes, so Verdi asked the question on the YouTube channel, can you upgrade these servers through Nitro? Nitro is like a package that they created that's basically like, you purchase Nitro and that gives you a discount on the boosts. So first you have to pay a monthly for the Nitro, and then you have to pay for the boosts. So it still ends up being like $25 roughly to unlock the normal features. So it would help if everybody, if everybody wants to contribute, do a boost, a single boost. I don't recommend it. I'm trying to get the Discord community rolling, and it's great that everybody can use it, but I really don't think a lot of people should be paying Discord just to get on and enjoy the server. So I'm still looking for alternatives and ways we can all share and communicate without having to pay money. So let me go ahead and dive into this specific. So basically, they've got all these hundreds of models, especially as more modders are starting to uncover things like the animation files that are left over. So for any of you animation fans out there that want to see what the game can do, there's actually files full of animations that they didn't use. And a while back, I actually tested that out. So you guys may have seen randomly, you now have a guy that will pee in the, he'll actually stop and pee in the, in one of the, sorry for that, for one of the fountains. So there was this little animation that I turned on a while back. I may have turned it back off just because that was funny for a second, but I may have turned it back off. So basically, they've got all these ones that they were trying to play with to see if they would actually use them, and then they ended up turning them back off. And so a lot of them are hidden down underneath their animations folder, and they actually have quite a few different ones that are just sitting there waiting to be turned on. And yes, fountains, thank you. And so they can be easily turned on. It's more of you can't control how they're used with a lot of these, so we don't have the back end support to kind of determine. So like, for example, I turned on where they would start peeing in the fountain, but then they did it all the time. Like they would constantly, as part of their route, they would go, if there was a fountain nearby or whatever, they would always stop and go pee. And it also didn't have its proper interrupt events, so a lot of the zombies would come up and actually chow down on the guys while they were trying to pee at the urinals, or in the fountains rather. And so because of that, I went ahead and turned that off, just because it's another area where the NPCs are just getting wiped out. But there are a lot of files in this game, so I think as the game continued to progress, it went through so many different development cycles that I think a lot of content ended up getting not used. And an example of that is I found, so I will share with you guys this list that I've been using. It is tedious, it does take time to figure out how to do it, but there is a file inside of here under presets that is called skinned_mesh.pre, and essentially this is the entire list of every model that is being brought into the games. Every piece of armor, every skin, every head, every tool that you can use, everything. And so what I've been doing is that basically once you have this list, which is kind of my cheat sheet here, essentially all you have to do is grab the name of the reference and then find out whether or not they implemented it or not. So once you actually grab that, you can go over here, say search for files. So this is Sublime 3, but I can basically just go in here and punch this in, and it'll go crawl all the files, and it will tell me. And so this should actually just go straight over to one if they used it. But this might be another example of where they didn't actually put this scarf on one. So they didn't. So here's a scarf that someone made for one that they didn't use. So if you want that hidden one scarf, you can take the time to add it to the files. But I found these all over the place, so I'm glad that was an easy example of where these things are hidden. So let me show you kind of how I'm using that. So there's two different things that I've been working on here, and they all link together. So let me explain kind of how this is all coming together. So basically, I started looking at the armor. I got the armor to a place that I liked how the armor was set up. And then I started researching how to get it into the game. The more I started looking at how to get the armor into the game, the more I realized that basically there was a lot of clipping, there was a lot of issues with the armor sets, and then also there's this crazy thing with the actual armor itself, where and to quickly answer Verdi's question over here on the YouTube channel, no, so creating custom content and getting custom content in the game is still eluding me. They have some protocols that they're using to pull in those files that basically you just can't drop in new files. I promise with all these armor updates, the amount of times that I could have made a cooler set of armor is endless, because of if I could just upload a single texture file and use that on the armor, it would make a drastic difference. But as it stands right now, I don't know how to get those files in, and I am actually thinking at this point that I might reach out to the actual company and try to find out if they will inform me of how to do that, because I think that one would be very beneficial for a lot of end users, and a lot of people would really enjoy seeing a lot of different types of textures and different things inside the system. And until we figure that out, that's kind of a stop in the road. So one of the things that I was doing is first I started down this path of wanting to get the new armor in. So let me just go ahead and launch the game as I talk about this. So basically, I wanted to be able to pull in all these new armor sets, and I did that. So I got all the armor in, and then I wanted to make sure that players could actually find this armor inside the world, and that it would be meaningful and interesting and exciting to find this armor. Then I also wanted to see if there was a way that I could start relating the armor to the actual game's progression. So you do have things like hazmat suits, gas masks, all these different armor sets that could make the game more interesting as far as how you're actually dialing through the game. And so then I started looking into a lot of the perk systems and a lot of things like that to determine could I actually start to get those perks into the game. And the answer to most of them is yes, I can, but I started to run into this one problem. So the challenge with this is that the game will not let me, and I've mentioned this before on an earlier stream, is that the game will not let you insert names, descriptions, that kind of thing. They have a pre-cached list of all of the objects' names and descriptions and those kind of things. And so that one was a major hit for me because I can't actually name the items that I'm creating, and I'm still actively searching for ways to do that. Like, how can I go in here and actually start to name some of these custom armors, because just having those armors inside of your inventory starts to get kind of confusing when you start ending up with a lot of the same item. And so I've been relying very heavily on the color system inside the game to start kind of renaming the colors. So as I create different variations and versions, I can start to understand which is which simply by using color. The challenge with this is, and one of the things I want to mention that actually kind of prompted a lot of this development, is that the armor system is god frickin' awful. Whoever the hell decided to go in and make a game where the armor basically was reused hundreds of times, and it was the exact same armor set, was nuts. So thanks, Verdi, for letting me know that. I'm actually boosting that now. Thank you for mentioning that. So basically, what they did is they created, I think I've gotten it down to about 50 different armor sets in the game. And then basically how they set that up is they would go through and reskin or reuse the same armor set over and over and over and over again by essentially just setting that up to where it would slightly change the color of the actual skin, or it would just, but it's the same mesh, they would just slightly change the actual color on the object. And what they did was they set this up to where essentially it will continue to give you the same armor over and over again. The difference is that it will, here we go, I found it. All right, I'm going to boost that up, and you guys let me know if that ends up being too loud. I'm going to balance that back out. Sorry, the volume may have been a little low there for some. So basically what they did is they set this up is to where every single time you level up, you have the potential to pick up the exact same armor that you're wearing over again, but with slightly boosted stats. So basically you can just, you're wearing a piece of armor, it's interesting, but then, okay, let's give you that armor again, but let's boost the armor up by 1. And so I have open right now the actual inventory list. Some of these are my actual modded versions, so it starts about right here. So if that's exciting to you guys, starting from this list at 28,686 all the way down to 3,507, those are all unique armors. Compared to up here, where they filled out most of this, all of them are really using the exact same armor over and over and over again. And so what I'm looking at doing as I've created this, as I've started to create this new system for accounting for the player and how you can actually go and have a new character inside the game, is looking at how can I start to basically retool some of their systems to where there's only certain types of armor in the world. As you find those armors, the armor will progress the armor will progress throughout the game in the sense that you'll find new armors, and those new armors will have boosted stats, but you can mix and match those armors with other armors that you like, so that you can continue to get better armor, but by finding actual new armor. But what I'm also trying to look at is trying to associate perks and your player's stamina and a lot of the ability to do things like fly and use a glider and grapple and all these things. I'm trying to associate that with your tech tree. So you have these 4 different roles inside the game that right now are not very useful, in my opinion. But things like the healer, ranged, armor, tank, and then the melee. If you, for example, you actually were able to throw on the tank armor and you actually had armor plating, you were actually able to take on the hordes, you probably also shouldn't be gliding around the city. But using things like zip lines and that kind of thing, sure. So I'm looking for a fun balance in between those systems to where as you start to get better armor, the tankier options do have the better armor stats, so you are able to get more damage resistance from the tank armor, and you are able to do certain things with that armor, but you're also restricted from doing certain other things. So kind of the hope here is that your play style will also kind of start to be determined by the armor that you wear, or at least the role that you pick. So the hope there is that as you have co-op and that kind of thing, more players actually start to say, well, okay, I'm going to go ranged, and so that I can provide these things, and I'm going to go tank so I can provide these things. And you can start to actually play with some of those co-op roles. And with that, I've been trying to associate that with being able to define who your character is. So they had such potential. I don't understand. Like I was crawling through these files last night, and I was sitting there going like, I actually don't understand how they missed the potential. I mean, the day of the white male protagonist in every game is getting kind of, I mean, that's boring. People should be able to define who they are inside the game. I mean, come on, it's not 2004 anymore. You know, you should be able to determine some of these things. And the fact that I was able to do it so easily meant that there was such possibility for character creation in this game, or at least being able to define what your character looked like. Playing as a female protagonist, I don't understand why in an RPG game that couldn't be a, you know, readily available thing. So what I've set up is basically the ability, and it's still being dialed in, but currently the idea is that I'm creating a slot that is now inside the inventory. So I actually put out a prompt the other day, but what I'm running into is basically they have a hard-coded slot system behind closed doors. This was actually where I was trying to create the ability to change your look from using this slot. That ended up not working because of the way that these armors are brought into the game. Basically, this helps define static models. So you have, by static, I mean not rigged up to an animation system. And so one of the challenges that I ran into very quickly is that when you set that up, it basically would cause your character, you would end up with like a head on your player that essentially the mouth wouldn't move, the eyes didn't look around, that kind of thing. And so now, with the way that I'm doing it now, it will actually update your player. And the fun part about this is that now with the new, sorry I keep switching around these different systems, but the stash has essentially become my loader system. But right now I have these cosmetic upgrades, which the cosmetic upgrades are noted by the bar of soap. And I'm still trying to find better images to use for all these custom materials, because again, I can't put names, which is super frustrating. So visualization is kind of important when it comes to these things. So right now, bar soap is visuals, and one of the reasons that I haven't released a lot of this work is that I hate that is the case, and I'm continuing to try to look for better ways to name and label these things in the game, so I don't get a lot of feedback that, you know, people don't understand which is which and that kind of thing. So I'm just trying to pace myself here. But essentially, once you've selected what your character is, and I haven't reskinned the arms yet, so bear with me. What I'm doing right now is going through and finding very interesting base level characters so that you can actually change your base level character. And then when I'm going in, once you go in here, you can then go in here and select like the bar of soap. So if you want to go in here and change certain features on your actual character, instead of using like an armor slot, you could actually go in here and say like, oh, okay, I actually want to change how I look on the character. And once you do that, it will also change the look on your new skinned character. So if you actually want to go in here and create an interesting character with things, I'm adding a tattoo system, I'm adding a bunch of different visual effects. The one that really pains me is that I found camouflage in the system so that I could actually do like face painting and stuff like that. But they've got that set with setting textures, which that all has to be done at a lower level. So how I'm trying to do it is basically, the concept is that you have these base characters that you select at the start. You pick the character that you kind of want to play as you're going through the experience, and as you continue to play, you start to unlock new characters. So you start to actually, with quests and that kind of thing, you start to find new looks, and that will allow you to go into your inventory when you're playing with your friends, or when you're playing the game by yourself. You're able to actually go and say, okay, I actually want to look like this other character. Just full disclosure here, I don't actually know what this character looks like. This is my test file. I pull in all sorts of different models on this. So if this is weird or broken, okay, it's not. It works. Cool. So if you want to play as a specific character inside the game, you want to have a big muscular chest, whatever you want to have, these characters are unlocked by certain quests throughout the game. And that way when you play with your friends online, you can continue to use these characters. And these characters will be set up in a way to where you can continue to use your own armor. This one is not currently set up for that. I'm having to do a lot of staging on the actual skeletons to get this all working properly. But basically, as you continue to play, you want to play as a zombie, you want to play as all sorts of different characters. You can just switch your visual, and so then as you continue to play, you have some cool interactions inside the game. So that's kind of the hope, and I hope you guys like that kind of system. Basically, the hope here is that you guys be able to select who you want to select, and kind of linking in those quests, those far-reaching quests throughout the game. Is that the idea is that as you play the side quests, you continue to unlock content. So that's kind of where the game started to fall flat, is that a lot of people wanted the base building, a lot of people wanted the reward system from the windmills, that kind of thing. That's really what they're putting a lot of stock into right now. Well, I want to try to switch that over a little bit for everybody that enjoys playing co-op together, of actually unlocking skins or unlocking armor as you go. So kind of the hope here is like, oh, okay, I faced that one boss that I really liked his armor. Well, now you have a random % chance of that person dropping an armor set that he's actually wearing. I like that idea, so that as you continue to play the game, certain characters, they'll get like the helm, and this other player will get the torso, and the other player will get the legs, and they can start changing gear and swapping gear in the game, and then you can end up with a whole set, that kind of thing. So you end up playing the game more so that you can actually unlock these armor sets and that kind of thing in the game, and that helps kind of define the play style and the reason that you continue to play the game. So on all of this, as always, I want your guys' feedback on this stuff as I'm continuing to go. I am going to start streaming out again. I apologize that I've kept so head down. It's just a lot of this stuff is grueling, long work. If you make one typo, it breaks, kind of thing. So you have to pay attention to what you're doing. And so I have been pretty limited on hours lately. So I've been trying to make every hour count. So I do apologize for my absence. And so I'm continuing to go on this, but I'm really hoping. So one of the things, big update for the mod, is that how does this relate to I Am Legion? So I Am Legion Reborn was a kind of a difficulty mod that was designed to make the game more interesting or challenging for players, especially with the AI. That's where 1.0 came out, so I was able to do that. But I am also trying to make it an overhaul. So kind of the hope here and the focus here is that I'm going to start breaking down what I'm releasing for the mod into submods. So for example, with the character creation, you don't have to play I Am Legion to receive the character creation. That's going to come out as its own mod and have its own standalone, but it's all going to link back into I Am Legion. And the hope is that by bringing these submods into I Am Legion, one of the challenges here is that so many people are going to install both, and so I'm going to have to make that really clear. But the hope is that if you install I Am Legion, you get a complete game overhaul, and a lot of different systems are modified and changed to be more meaningful, more interesting. And then you can also, if you don't like the whole difficulty thing, you don't like what I've done with all the humans. I've heard so many people say, like, the humans are annoyingly difficult, that kind of thing. If you don't like that, then, you don't have to have that part of it. I Am Legion is going to be kind of a configuration of my mods that's designed with the different difficulties to where hopefully it's all meaningful, tied together. But if you want to play specific parts of it in different pieces, I'm going to release all of that into submods. I just have to kind of figure out when to do that, because once I release it into submods, it's going to become more difficult to support. By that I mean it just takes a lot of time to go to each individual one and update every single file, respond to everybody's bug reports, that kind of thing. So I'm still looking at the timing for that, but that is coming in here in the near future. And so I'll continue to improve these things and continue to put these out for the game, because as I've gone through these things, I'm shocked that they missed this opportunity. They made an RPG game that if one single developer can do this to their game, I'm very sad to see that they haven't hooked up more of these types of systems. It's just a lot of missed potential, in my opinion. So with that, I think I'm going to turn over to where I'm going to actually start crawling through again, show you guys kind of how I'm creating new characters, how I'm creating, custom characters that will be tied to the story, that kind of thing. I do have to jump out for work here in about 45 minutes, so I'll get your guys' feedback, your questions. If anybody wants to scroll back through the stream and catch up, please come join me and catch up with me. Let me know how you're doing. And I have noticed that the player base for Dying Light 2 has rapidly fallen off lately. And so I'm still here. I'm going to continue to work on it. It's just one of those things of where I'm trying not to do it daily anymore because I wasn't sleeping a lot. So, trying to make sure I'm maintaining that mental health as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start crawling. Thank you guys for all the comments over on the YouTube. So I am following all your guys' comments. I have not been looking at Discord. Let me make sure there's no comments coming through Discord. Should be good there. And so I'll start to answer some of you guys' questions, continue to roll through on this update. And I look forward to talking to you guys more. Thank you guys for all jumping on here. So Verdi has asked the most questions here on YouTube. Let me start at the top. And just start to see if there's any of these that I may have missed. I apologize for missing so many of these questions as we were going through. Thank you for joining, David. Good to see you on here. Aftermen's, good to see you on here as well. And the GRE anomalies, I've actually, one of the things that I want to do is go through and actually change the game. I was playing the game through the other day, and I realized that it's kind of become... I played Dying Light 1 the other day when I was fixing it, and for some reason when I think of Dying Light 1, the immediate thought that I have is like you're inside of a shop, you break open a door, you go in, you're looting, and then zombies, with my mod, start to come up the stairs, and then they're walking inside, so you have to hurry up and loot the system and then climb out a window kind of thing before they fill the house. For some reason when I think about that, it becomes down to the single individual zombie. Each fight seemed more meaningful. Yet when I play Dying Light 2, it kind of becomes about the horde. I don't feel like I'm having those single interactions with zombies that are like super intense or super interesting anymore. So I do want to turn back to the physics. I do want to turn back to the weapon systems and start to try to aim to make the game feel more interesting when actually fighting individual zombies. And make it more scary when you have more than 3 zombies, unless you have the weapons or the armor to actually start taking on the zombies in the post-apocalyptic world. Along with that are the bow systems, the crossbow, the bow and arrow. Personally, I don't play with those because of the auto-aim system, and it's actually gotten worse. Like, I originally, back in earlier versions of the mod, I disabled those systems, but lately I've noticed they've all came back with a passion, and some of them I can't turn off at all now. And one of those that's true of was the crossbow and the bows and arrows. So for me personally, I don't like using those weapons because of the auto-aim system. So I'm continuing to try to find those systems if I can and disable certain systems. but I do think I did finally get the stupid grapple indicator. I found that one the other day. It's called the grapple target. I don't know why it eluded me for so long, but I did finally find that sucker because that thing's been annoying me for a long time. So how all that measures into the GRE anomalies, sorry about that, is that basically the GRE anomalies are a center city boss that requires you to fight them, but then the world is becoming more complex. So now you have larger spawn numbers, you have the volatiles are able to get in there. I've seen everybody's feedback. I think the challenges with this is that the GRE anomalies are kind of the like main bosses of the game. You do have human bosses as well, but because they're so challenging, or they're meant to be so challenging, I found that a lot of people reported that they weren't that challenging, and they were able to blow through the game pretty quickly. I'm still looking into whether or not to try to make the scaling based on co-op, to have like a co-op pack and then have like a single player pack, so that the difficulty scales appropriately with co-op players and then without. There is a file for scaling some of it, but it's super broad, it's super generalized, and it was actually scaling it in the wrong direction back when I first found it. So I'm continuing to look at that to try to make those GRE anomalies to where they're more of a threat, and if you can take one down, you're like, holy hell, I took one down. And that's kind of the hope, is that you actually start crafting more things, grenades, whatever you can, to where when you go fight those guys, you actually feel like you put in the effort to fight them, you won, and then making the payout much better. So that's again where the armor systems, where the loot system, all of that comes into play, is that I want to make those like a major outcome in the game, is that you deleted one of those anomalies. And I also want to start tying some of the more legendary weapons and legendary armor to fighting those guys, so that when you actually fight through them, and then you get the armor sets at the end, you can actually join a game and see that someone's wearing a specific armor and be like, holy hell, where did you get that armor? And it's because you fought this one GRE anomaly kind of thing. So it's going to be very interesting with some of this scaling. Once I have all these components in place, I think it's all going to fall into place pretty well. It's just going to take a lot of balancing. So I look forward to your guys' feedback on that. Then weapons be dependent on your level, like getting a level 9 table leg. Yeah, so essentially that's the same thing they've done with this armor system. So I haven't gotten to the weapons yet. Lord bless when I actually get to the weapons. But it's the same thing with this armor, is that some of these armors, they essentially, you have the same thing. I can actually pull it up right here. So you've got an orange tier glove. So a glove that's tier 1, which means it's probably like your more basic visual glove. They've set that up as a tier 1 orange, and it's because they have so few actual armors that they've done this. But basically you can go up to each one of these in the outfit visualizations def, and you can start to see where they essentially just reskin the same armor over and over and over again. And just like the table leg, maybe if you were wanting to go skiing in the game, some of these armors would make sense, but some of these other ones, you're sitting there going like, why is he running around with a windbreaker as like a tier 9 solution? Like, it just doesn't look. For me, it was a failed mark. But what I'm trying to do now is pair more of that to the runner's concept, that it's light wear. So you can maybe jump farther, you can run faster, different things like that. And by that, when I say run faster, I actually mean other armor should slow you down, so you'll actually run probably the normal speed if you're wearing the lighter armor. So balancing that out to where, not trying to restrict the player's movement and that kind of thing, not trying to make the game, frustrating, but rather making it more realistic to where, you're wearing a windbreaker because you want to move fast and you want to be able to keep your stamina and you don't want to have metal plating on you and that kind of thing. But the tanks should have metal plating. They should have, helmets that look like they could actually take a beating and that kind of thing. So continue to try to look at that. And I think the end result is, and I'm still looking at this, and so the mod is taking a little while for this major update because of the amount of balancing I'm having to do. But essentially what I'm looking at is essentially tearing out their armor system completely and then rewriting an entire armor system, if that makes sense, with the loot system. Because currently they are they've got, let's see if I can pull up the default loot. Basically, they've got this armor set list that they've populated. I think it's actually not in the default, it's in the armor sets, which is down under item sets. Sorry. So if we go to item sets, all of this is how they're setting up their armor. And I have these big, nasty, this thing is 43,000 lines long. Well, that might be my fault where I've added some of mine. If I go up, actually, can't include mine in this. So, still 43,000 lines long. And some of these things are like where they've given you toilet paper as valuables. But a lot of it is where they have gone in here and created this tier system for the same armor pieces. And they're doing it by another added thing that I didn't add here is that they're also setting it up to where it's also based on, the tier system is based on whether or not you're a certain level. So for example, they're scaling the exact same armor, but they're also making sure that you can never find the lower version of that armor again. So they're essentially phasing out generic loot as the game goes, as far as the armor goes. So you're never able to find those lower tier armors again once you hit to a certain point. But that's not a problem for them at all, because you still have the visuals of the lower tier loot or armor. They've just scaled it all the way up to where it can be worn at tier 9. I would never write that. And that's just me, so to each their own. I'm just saying that takes your crappiest armor and scales that armor up to legendary status for no freaking reason. You can't make armor that looks more like a tier 9. Make it to where, the visuals of that armor change. So that's what I'm looking at now, and that's what I started doing earlier on, is saying okay, I've identified a piece of armor that maybe we can start to inject certain things into that armor as it tiers up to where, okay, now you're wearing that same armor, but you have leather straps, you have pockets. I haven't even gotten, so I'd made a backpack system so that you can have different backpacks. I'm trying to link different backpacks to your carrying weight so you can find different backpacks and therefore you can carry more inventory. There's just so many systems in here that you can actually set up, that can be set up right for the RPG side of it. And I think a lot of players didn't like some of the RPG elements in the game because I think they were implemented pretty poorly. So trying to rescale some of those things to where those RPG elements are done properly might actually make a very interesting, creepy zombie parkour game that allows you to create your own character, define your own armor, find new armor, and when I get to weapons, I get to weapons. That's right now I'm also trying to create a new loot system. So weapons will be a big part of it, but I will say, going back to Dying Light 1, I am actually very pleasantly surprised by their weapon systems in Dying Light 2. I think they did a great job with the variety of weapons, their impacts, that kind of thing. I think there's a ton of code for that. I think the challenge is that the physics system is not up to par of the original Dying Light 1 game. I think they've gotten better with the release and the call to action for fixing a lot of those systems. But even the one of the things I could never find was the edge detection, so that when they get close to the edge, they actually fall over the edges. There's no there's no code in the game to say that once they get to the edge, allow them to step off the edge, because their nav meshes are all baked to where they stop at that. They're not seeing the continued pathway, and so there's some things that you just can't fix, but hopefully what I've done is I've pulled the physics update out for the most part. I've left some of it that I've determined it makes it a little bit better. But the idea is that I think the company will slowly fix those things, hopefully. Cheers, company. But I'm going to try to move on to other systems that hopefully will make the I Am Legion Reborn experience better for everybody. Okay, so I think that was most of the questions. So I'm gonna take a step back and actually start writing some stuff here so you guys can keep up with some of the ways that I'm implementing some of these things. I got about 30 minutes, so feel free to dump questions. Feel free to give feedback on anything I may have described. Again, these are all things that I am defining some of these things for myself, but I am also trying to create systems that are not in the game so that more people can have fun experiences inside the game and potentially continue to play the game. Because the more and more this goes, I was looking over the new DLC files, and they really did just reskin everything. And so the more they do that, the more players are just going to fall off. So I'm even trying to go in and redo some of their models for the first game. But that does actually let me also show some of the things I've been doing. So with that, the other day someone asked why I was going in and changing the visuals for the different zombies and for the infected. And so I want to show that really quickly. Basically, the idea is that there's so many missed opportunities for used armors and items inside the game that instead of just randomly finding those in the loot, I actually wanted to start to try to tie those things into the world themselves. So, for example, every zombie had clothing for some reason. I realized that the other day, that all their base zombies are all the same. Like, they're like essentially 7 different torsos with color changes. But every single one of them has like clothing on. And so kind of the first prompting was like, can I get a torso that's just a bare torso so that I can start seeing what I can do from there. And so what I did was I actually went to and yes, I am also aware of the Chrome issue in this game. I do want to fix this as well. I agree. With the latest update, I feel like some of this came back. I felt like I got rid of a lot of it, but I'm gonna have to release an update that once again kills this Chrome effect. But I will mention this is not mine by any means. This is their built-in one. Do quests scale with your player level? Hey, Ninox and Fowler, thanks for joining the stream. For the question there, do quests scale with your player level? Are you talking about the built-in quests inside the game and whether or not those scale? Hang on, I'm going to actually just die really quick because you can't actually even see what I was trying to show because of these things. Hopefully this will reset the weather here. If not, we'll just go to sleep. No, so they do not currently scale in any means that I can think of how you would think that they would scale. If you mean by the armor that you get and that kind of thing, yes, in the sense that, again, it's only like 38 sets of armor that they've continued to change the tier. So the tiers increase as the game progresses. So you do get different tier systems. But as far as do their difficulty scale, no. There's no scaling systems in there. But essentially, so what I set up is that there were several zombies in the world that were basically all clothed and that kind of thing. I've left a lot of them, ones that I thought looked pretty good. But I've also gone through and actually updated a lot of the withered zombies to actually include those as part of the base. So you'll start to get more of the withered and worn look, but also bringing more diversity to the list in general. I will also mention that this guy right here that's grabbing me, I can't find him in the files. So he's actually, just like I can't change some of the spawns for whatever reason, this one guy, which I actually originally set out to find him, I couldn't actually find him. So I'm continuing to try to find him because he is the one that gets spawned the most in the game. Beanie guy. For sure. But what I've gone and done is update a lot of these models to where you have more of a withered and ragged looking set. And then you also, I noticed that all of these zombies were once again white. Maybe that's just determined by, you know, they're out in the sun and they're withered kind of thing. But I've actually gone through and tried to add some diversity to these as well, so that you have more than just the same zombies. But you'll now end up with a good amount of withered zombies also inside these packs, and the goal here is to try to make that loot actually more based around what you would expect to get. So with the PK, so the PK have also received an update, and that update was basically trying to make them look like they're more prepared to go into war. And I do know that because of the amount of zombies here, ooh, there was a little despawn bug there. I've actually seen it in that exact same area before, so I do wonder if there's something right here on this like walkway that causes them to despawn. But I know you're having to see them very quickly, but a lot of them are now, they now have actual helmets, mouth coverings, goggles, actual armor sets, that kind of thing, so that when you see these guys, they should actually be more armed to the teeth if they're out here. So they should actually be in the world, and they're fighting on the street level. They should actually have decent gear. And I've tried to make this pretty diverse so that it doesn't do it with every character, but each one of these characters will have kind of unique armor on them, at least as unique as I can try to make it with so many different spawning of the same PK. But they're one of the groups I'm slowly going through and trying to improve those, along with the actual infected. So the infected themselves should also have some more unique armors. I have not made it to the actual renegades yet, so the renegades have not been changed, but I do have a couple of updates for them that I'm excited to launch. But it's kind of scaling through one at a time and making sure that it's being done correctly, that there's no more visual glitches and that kind of thing. I'm also continuing to look at the scaling for the armor for the zombies. So the zombies continue to have this weird balancing issue that a lot of people have noted, that, you know, some people have mentioned that they don't like how the zombies scale in their level in general, that they wish they, you know, were the same amount of health as the game progressed, that they didn't need to scale. I don't think that necessarily works, but I have tried to go through and balance that out a little bit more. But kind of the hope here is that as I continue to balance the loot systems and these other systems, that I'm able to find a balance for these zombies to where you're actually able to have engaging fights, and the weapon systems are not just slaughtering through the zombies as you go. Thanks, David. Thanks for stopping by. As always, I appreciate your support on here, man. But currently, the reason that I'm slicing through these guys so quickly is obviously because I'm using a legendary weapon, and so it's not very representative, but it does take down the zombies a little bit too quick in some cases with some of the balancing right now in the mod with the normal weapons, and so I am continuing to try to balance that back out. But you should start to see a lot more changes, so I am going to try to continue these updates to the models as I'm going through the game, because I'm discovering so many different model groups, different armors and different things that can go into the world. So instead of just making it about the loot systems and only putting these things kind of hidden inside the loot systems only. I'm also trying to populate the world with some of the things I'm finding to make that more meaningful as well. So you're not, why is he saying PKs? He's not PKs, he's Renegade. Okay, but I just wanted to show you guys that a little bit of changes. Somebody asked earlier, I believe it was actually Fowler asked, and so because of that I want to answer that, so it will help tie together the world mechanics along with the loot system. Fowler asked a question, have you met any old E3 animations? I mentioned earlier on the channel, yes, there's tons of them that are not hooked up in the system, so you can go to the animations files in here under characters, and there are tons and tons and tons of animation files that are not actually hooked up or being used. Turning them on makes things janky, so they were pulled out for obvious reasons on some of them, but you kind of have to go through, turn them on, add them to the lists of animations to be played. The ones I played around are more the generic idle animations that the players are doing, because I wanted them to do something more than go search through trash cans. But all of those had varying degrees of, yeah, kind of. And so it kind of comes down to, are you wanting to make the game just have more animations, or are you wanting the game to actually have more, immersive experiences? And if you're doing it for immersion, some need a lot of fixing, and I'm guessing that's why they turned them off. Let me see if anybody else. Thanks, Aftermins. I appreciate it. Is this a different Aftermins? Aftermins, did you change your icon? Or are there two Aftermins in here? But I appreciate the support. Thanks for the shout out there. Just doing what I can as a designer and modder. But let me turn back over. So I think I've talked now for about 45 minutes. I'm going to actually switch over to just working on some stuff. If you guys want to continue to hang out, ask questions, I'm going to pay attention and watch that stream over there. But I am going to try to make some updates here and at least get my 20. So last night I got my 20 base characters kind of set up. All of them haven't been finalized yet, so I'm going to go through and actually try to make those cleaned up a little bit so that I can at least say those are good to go for now. Let's see. Another thing that I thought was interesting is that the model for the base Aiden actually has they've added, so most of the time when you go into the skeleton files, they usually add a mask onto the texture that will help things like that will still allow you to balance the hair so that you have different masks for like facial features and that kind of thing. They've actually baked those into Aiden. So I found out the other day that to make this actually happen, I'm glad I added the other selections for different characters because by going and getting rid of his baked texture, it makes him look a little weird with the hair, but in the same way that it makes everybody look a little weird. And so you need that like basic mask applied. So I have to find a good texture for the base Aiden character that I can then add a mask to for the hair. That's a good like all-around base hair mask. That's just a side note there. Fowler asked a question for the thanks Verdi, talk to you next time. Thanks for stopping by and giving feedback. So for the Fowler, you mentioned for the hazmat suit, absolutely. So I'm trying to add as much possible as far as the different ways that the armors affect the world. The challenge, as I was mentioning earlier, is that I can't add text, I can't add descriptions, I can't add names. So for example, I think I know of a way, for example, to make it to where you can't use the glider if you use a certain armor piece. Okay, great. But if I can't add a description to the armor that says you can't use the glider while using this armor piece, then every single player of the game is going to be frustrated because they don't understand what the armor is doing in the game. And so the challenge that I'm facing right now is that I can't actually add any descriptions on there to say what I'm actually causing. And so because of that, I'm a little wary of making it game dependent. For example, I found a gas mask. Great. So if you want a gas mask and you want to be able to actually use the gas mask to go inside of tunnels and that kind of thing and not be as affected, great. But the problem with that is that it basically can't have any visual indicators on when you hover over there that says, this is for going into dark places, however I would want to describe it. So I'm continuing to look for those solutions to figure out how I can go in there and make these more meaningful. If anybody wants to pair up and start looking, I'll go ahead and throw out this prompt. Basically, underneath the inventory, there's a system inside of this game that you can find because it has the little asterisks. So if we go in here and say, basically anywhere that there's a little asterisk symbol, they have a description file that is being pulled in. So it's actually pulling these files in, and they've been pre-baked somewhere, and they're all over the place. So you can find these little description files all over the place. And it contains the name of the actual file or the actual item, and it also contains the description that they've written down. But I think it has something to do with like how they're rendering their text in the game or something like that. They've set up a system like this. I can't believe that there's not just some file somewhere that has like a string list of a description that I can get access to, but there is no description file that I can find. And so because of that, if someone wants to try to research the string value asterisk system in the game and help me figure out how to break through on this naming system, on the description system, that would go that would go a long way with this, because I currently can't really name my armor sets, and I also can't describe my armor sets inside the game. And that is super frustrating, just because I want you guys to be able to understand kind of what you're picking up and what it does inside the game. But here you can see, so that first one I was doing was the Pilgrim set, and so you don't have, you can't pick that one up, but this one you can pick up. So you can see here that it has the actual descriptor for both the name and the description. And I have been able to go in there and basically modify some of this, and it's broken the message. So if you guys saw the video earlier, one was called like Punk. That's where I basically messed up the name. So I was able to kind of make it work to just call it Punk. But that was pulling in a file that was calling it Punk, not anything that I wrote. So still trying to figure that out. If you guys want to take on a modding challenge for good, or for the good of helping this out, that would be great, because I do think I have to get to a certain point, and then I have to basically stop and figure out what I'm doing with the naming and description system. I've basically just been ignoring it and going on until I figure out, how I want to implement these things, and then I'll go back and figure out the naming conventions and the descriptions and all that stuff. So please let me know if you guys find anything like that inside the files if you are modders. Count Robo, thanks for joining, and I agree. So I think as a developer myself, I enjoy getting on here. I think everybody should have to have light shed on their work so that they can kind of talk about why they're doing and what they're doing, and get active feedback. So I appreciate that. I want you guys to basically tell me if I'm wrong, and if you guys like what I'm doing, because either I really am just doing it for me, or hopefully it's something that you guys will get excited about. Fowler, I see that you retracted a message there, but I wasn't sure what you asked, but I am trying to figure out how to make all of these things meaningful and impactful in the game, but I think this update is going to drastically shift the gameplay and how the game is played for the foreseeable future. It's going to be challenging to keep updated because I basically said I wasn't going to do this in the first year of the game. But I do think that the game kind of needs it because I feel like the player base is falling off fairly rapidly. So I'm trying to help with that. Thanks, Aftermans. I appreciate that. You know, some people won't. Some people won't like the mod because of the difficulty, and so as I mentioned before, I am trying to break the mod down into separate pieces so that people can play certain parts of the mod, so that they're not limited to, you know, having volatiles chew their faces if they actually just wanted to create a character inside the game. It's just if I have multiple components, it becomes more difficult to keep updated. I have like 16 sub mods. I have to go update 16 sub mods every. Essentially, what it's kind of coming down to twice a month, I think is about right. With the events, things break, and then with the events, and then with these new updates, they're breaking a lot of stuff with these new updates. So I am interested to see what comes out here in the future, just because they have an interesting platform. It's just now kind of how do they choose to use their platform? Just for skins, or are they going to try to actually add on the buggy systems and all this other stuff here in the future? So Fowler, you mentioned that I should not bloat the updates as you discover new stuff. It just delays the release. Better to have new stuff in the backlog. I kind of agree with you, but so just to mention again, so I Am Legion Reborn hit its 1.0 over 4.5 months of development, pretty much daily development after the release of the game in February. After that point, I decided to step away and not work on the game actively. I did discover this new used case that I'm excited about. It's very interesting to me, but it's not anything that really ties into I Am Legion Reborn in its original sense of what that mod was trying to achieve in the game. I do feel like I did achieve what I wanted to achieve in the game, other than as things update, they'll continue to break what I Am Legion is trying to do in the game. And so because of that, that mod is actually the one that will continue to become more complicated, because as they release new NPCs, like for example, volatiles didn't even exist in the game a couple of months ago. Now there are actual volatiles, and then so they supported the one volatile that came with the red flare, and then they released a major volatile update that made volatiles in hives, and then the new version of the volatile. And so because of that, they're paying attention to their NPCs in different ways at different times, and that will continue to always break I Am Legion Reborn. Like, it will continue to break, and it's the same thing that happened to the first Dying Light game, where eventually I couldn't actually even update the mod anymore. It essentially just broke the mod. They blocked everything that I was trying to do with the NPCs, and so there went that whole mod, essentially. What's left with I Am Legion for the first game is some of the changes that I made to the shops, the guns, the inventory systems, some of the AI detection. So I was able to make improvements there, but all my AI work went out the door. And so I'm waiting to see what happens with this game, but I am actually pretty confident that at one point or another, I Am Legion Reborn will probably be just as broken as the first one for the first game, because I can't actually do what I was trying to do with that mod anymore, which actually is the reason I stopped playing the game, which makes me very sad still. So what I'm trying to do now is continue to do other world building elements and make those better, but going in and doing things like changes to the glider, the hook systems, all these things, I can do that, but there are several other modders out there that are doing one-line fixes that I want to support them as well. So if they want to bring that in to the if they want to bring that into the mod, so if you want to go find other mods on the Nexus and play those with my mod, you currently can. And so that's what I'm trying to establish, is that if people want to go get the ones that change grapple and change, gliders and stuff like that, I have my own solution for it that I'm going to try to release with this new update. But that doesn't mean that everybody will like it. And so it's kind of a, it's a mixed bag as far as like supporting a mod and how a mod develops over time. Because yes, I could hyper focus on just trying to do what I Am Legion Reborn was doing. But I do know that there's a timeline associated with that, I could kill myself, put in 2 more weeks, straight worth of work. And then in 3 weeks, they release an update that breaks those 2 weeks worth of work. And so for me personally, as with my workload that I'm doing on my job, those hit hard. Like, it makes me want to abandon the mod kind of thing, because the community falls off. Now all of a sudden you get new players that they're like, this mod's garbage. If you had been around from the start of the game, and that's the thing, is I have been around since the start of the game. It's just the problem is the updates that they're putting out break content for the mod, and it becomes quick fixes that don't balance the game out correctly. And so I am trying to balance that out, but it's a lot of hours. And unpaid hours. So I do know that I have supporters. I do appreciate everybody's donations, but that is just a lot of hard labor, of tying everything together, fixing everybody's bugs, answering YouTube's, answering Nexus, answering all these different things, and then also, not even getting to play the game essentially. So that's I'll get off my my pulpit there, but. Afterman, so I Am Legion actually came from a mix of 2 things. So this is actually, so I'm a big fan of this. So a while back, there was this movie Will Smith played in that was based on a book that I used to love, called I Am Legend. That obviously that's where everybody immediately ties to. But there's this other book that, let me pull up this title really quick. So what is it called? Heroes, Zombies, Heroes. So there was this book I read a long time ago, and I always forget the name for whatever reason. So there's this movie, or this book called X Heroes. And if you guys haven't read this book, it's this series that is just absolutely amazing. So it follows this concept of the world is killed off by zombies, but during that time there were superheroes. So there were superheroes in the world, and they were fighting bad guys and that kind of thing. And then the zombie apocalypse happened, and these are about the heroes that are left after so many have fallen to the zombie plague. But the cool part is that some of the zombies are actual dead superheroes that have their powers kind of set to always on kind of thing. And so they're having to fight kind of like their fallen brothers and sisters as well. So it was a really great book. There was 3 of them. It got complicated, it got kind of weird, but it was super good. Very interesting book. I would highly recommend it. But the main person that they are fighting in this book, actually it's the second book. So there's this superhero out there that he basically invades people's minds. He mind controls them, that kind of thing. Well, then he dies and becomes a zombie. And after he dies, he becomes a zombie and actually becomes a hive mind for the zombies because they're all dead. He's dead. So he actually becomes a hive mind for them, and he calls himself Legion. And so his name in the book is Legion, and he makes the zombies smarter because before they were fighting the zombies and they were stupid and they were stumbling around and they were kind of dumb. But then once he dies, he invades all their minds and makes them way more intelligent. So it's like they're fighting a presence inside of each zombie. I thought it was super creepy, really loved the concept, loved the book series. And so I blended the 2 things together to where, for me personally, it was like this idea that, you're in this open world, you're alone, it's just you up against the elements. And then if the enemies were actually intelligent enough to stalk you, to creep on you, that kind of thing, that would make for a super creepy game. And so I Am Legion was born. So that's kind of the backstory there. If you haven't read the book, I would highly recommend it. But yeah, so the first game, Fowler, you were mentioning. So with the first game, most of what you can play now in I Am Legion Reborn was in the first game. So I actually had them done way better. I have videos on YouTube. I'm on YouTube now. You can go back to my early development videos for I Am Legion back in the first one. And basically, I turned every zombie to where the zombies were essentially what the first game's volatiles were, in the sense that they were listening, they were hunting, they were searching the map. They weren't standing around being idle. They were crawling up buildings, searching inside. They were actively roaming the world looking for you. And it made it to where, as you're crawling through the game, you had stealth. So you were able to watch them crawl around the map. In the first game, you weren't able to affect the number of spawns. I figured out a way later on, but it basically causes major instability in the game. So the idea is that you kind of keep low and you watch them, and they're crawling all over the place. And so you can actually creep around the map if you don't want to fight. And then when you do fight, they are intense, they're smart, they flank, they work together, they scream, they bring the map down on you. Places where you thought you were safe before, behind fences and gates and walls, are no longer safe because they can crawl over them. That kind of thing. It made the game to where I had people streaming all over the world with different streams of people screaming and being freaked out while playing the game. Super intense. It was a very niche kind of thing. Not everybody was into it. I get that. But it was something that I've never seen in a game like this before. And once they blocked all of it, that all went away. And so what is in there now, we're back to the dumb shamblers, only they can sense you better. Cool. So they basically lost me pretty quickly. The ultimate version that's in Dying Light 2 is nothing compared to what I was able to pull off with the AI in Dying Light 1. They're okay in the sense that I can get them moving. They're running around fine. But these, I'm only able to kind of write that they go off on a random path and they may encounter you kind of thing. But I can't get them crawling up the walls slowly, creepily. I can't get them, searching rooftops creepily. I mean, sometimes, but I can't call the code to where they'll go do that in a way that's creepy. I mean, they'll do it, but it's just not super creepy. Some people said that they like the new volatiles like slow ape crawl. Personally, I like the animations on the first game. That's why I'm trying to port in some of the stuff from the first game. It's a lot of binding stuff. There's no way I'm going to be able to get a lot of that working. So kind of giving up on some of those hopes and dreams. But it was Dying Light 1 with the mod back in 2016 was my top game. By far. It was the hardest, most craziest, most difficult, most creepy game that I had, and co-op was intense. And so then they did the re-release of the game. So the game came out for 2 years, and then they released the Pursuit. And when they did that, they had their rolling version numbers of the application, and then they pulled it back. So it was something like 1.2.5 or whatever, and then all of a sudden they released the Pursuit, and they re-released their engine. So they re-released the engine and they blocked all of the NPC stuff. So then you got a new 1.0.1 or whatever with the Pursuit. And when they did that, they changed everything behind the closed doors. Like, you couldn't get access to most of the stuff. All the data files became essentially useless. And so, having seen that in the first year, or the first 2 years of the first game, I'm very confident that they will probably do something similar with this game, because I think what they're doing is they're releasing the game, they're getting the money from the initial release, and then they're writing in the things that they want to write. So I'm sure the Techland team is currently writing new content, possibly a re-release of the engine. Hellraid came into the game later on. That was like a port game that is in the game, but it's like hidden behind a lot of barriers, so you can't mess with Hellraid. I can't call the spawns for Hellraid. there's a lot of weird stuff behind the engine that I can't get to anymore with Dying Light 1. And I keep going back and I keep trying to revive that mod. I know everybody's upset about the zombies are silent and all that other stuff. But personally, every time I go back and mess with Dying Light 1, it's like 3 times as long because of the instability of the engine. It can't do what I'm trying to do with it. And so most of the time I just get crashes, endless loops. I don't get good debug logs. So that one got frustrating. So anyway, I digress. The whole point of them kind of putting out here is that I don't expect this modding thing to last forever with Dying Light 2. I'm getting it in while it's good because who knows what the engine will look like here in 3 years. They're going to continue to release their content in the form of skins or whatever they're trying to do with the company. When I've reached out to Techland before, silence. So because of that, I have tried the petition thing back when I was a zealot. So I am Legion, Dying Light 1, just for shits and giggles, I'll bring this up. Petition on change.org. How sad is that? This was back, baby Jason, long time ago. I had so many people excited about the mod and wanted to play the mod and that kind of thing, as did I. And so I put all these links. PC Gamer, did an article on the mod, so I had a lot of people on the mod and that kind of thing. Great support. Named 15 most brutal mods of all time. Great stuff. And then the re-release of the engine killed it. Done. And so I put up a petition, I wrote emails, I did the thing, and that didn't go anywhere. Some people signed it and they were like, yay, we love the mod. It didn't go anywhere. So we'll see where this goes. But essentially I'm trying to get in as much interesting stuff as I can, because if I can get in things like character creation and that kind of thing into their game, that has the potential to last. I don't think they'll change their model system, their armor systems. Those are things that will probably last. What will be a major pain is that I have to update with whatever updates they do for their armor or models or whatever. However, I think that one will probably last for a long time. So I'm continuing to look at where I can make an impact in the game to where it'll last. I Am Legion Reborn might not be here in 2 years or will be seriously broken. Keep an eye on the channels, because that will, that's usually, most of the time when the user group comes back, it's the day of the update. So an update comes out, I put out a hotfix patch within the first 24 hours most of the time, but by then it's already missed that wave because people jump back on the day of the release. They get excited, they go look at the mods, all the mods are broken, and then they fall back off. So it's kind of a weird cycle with this kind of game development, and it has its challenges, but I'm super excited for my own reasons for messing with these kind of things. But it really doesn't, the longevity doesn't last when you're messing with core systems. I mean, I'm messing with their AI. So the game's AI is going to change. It's going to get updated. It should, because it was kind of janky to begin with. So, yeah. Anyway, that's my spiel on it. Grain of salt. But hopefully it'll last this time. But, you can go read the reviews on I Am Legion 1, and that's, essentially exactly how I feel about it, is that I wish I could fix it. And I am going to continue to try. It's just, it's a lot of hours. But they do claim at Techland that they support modding, but I haven't really seen that on my side. Let's see. Aftermans, you said that the hive mind. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So if you had this concept of like the volatiles are able to scream, and that gives, I like kind of the bat complex of like sound echoes. So they hear groans, they hear sound in the city. They have kind of like bat sensors kind of thing, to where like the more noise starts to echo in the city, the more frustrated and angered and like searching they get. Is kind of how I've been approaching it to the Dying Light 2 version of the mod, because that's the sound system. They have a pretty interesting sound system in this game. And so you can actually find a lot of interesting little things that you can do that cause sound waves to echo throughout the city. But you guys have also reported where that causes some weird aggression things. So it is kind of an interesting system, though. Okay, I definitely talked well over where I needed to get out of here and head to work. Let me see if I can fix this one thing at least so you guys can see one of the models that I'm working on here. And that's it. I knew it was in there. I will say, luckily, a lot of the issues I've seen with the model side is that if you end up with like a bug in the model side, you essentially just end up with a green character, and that green character can be easily fixed just by fixing a syntax error or whatever. And so those are nice. It makes it a lot easier to trial and error than doing the AI. Most of the time, if you're writing any type of AI, you need really good debug statements so that you can properly balance and test. And let's see. So I wanted to see, yesterday I was testing out, I mentioned earlier on the stream that there is the concept of camouflage in the game, which I like. And so I was trying to see if there was a fun way to latch onto the camouflage system. That's not the right one. To where potentially I could release kind of a, yeah, there we go. So you have like a character that you start with like a base character, and because I can't really make the camouflage a gear that you could toggle on and off, instead maybe a stealth mission or that kind of thing gives you the unlocked character, to where now your base characters could have like camouflage or something like that. Something, you know, fun to where you can go in there and say like, okay, I want to play the upgraded version of this character, you know, so that they have increased stealth or whatever. So I have access to a lot of those systems, and so even setting up side quests so that all your friends know that you completed the side quest, you know, stealth mission or whatever. So now your character has this camouflage mask. And then, of course, allowing you to toggle it back off. So if you don't want actually to have the camouflage, you could always turn that off. But yeah, it's kind of the fun idea there. But you can see how with the mask system, so I was talking about earlier with the hair. So with Aiden specific, they gave him this, actually like what you're seeing right here on his front of his head there, that's all texture. It's not actually the mesh, but it blends in so well with this hair mesh that you think it's his hair. And that was kind of fun once I turned that off and I realized like, oh crap, that's just literally a hair texture. So he actually has the strongest hair texture in the game. So if you turn that off, you'll see that now all of a sudden you have all these little patches. So this hair becomes super patchy. And so what I'm trying to do is figure out a good balance for all of these characters to have somewhat of a hair mask, I guess. Because technically, if I figure out which one is like the mohawk and that kind of thing, you could very easily have them have like a mohawk or something cool along with some of these masks. But I am discovering quite a bit of unused content in the game. For example, this gas mask is not seen in the game anywhere. And so I am able to find some things that I guess are cut content that I am bringing into the game as actual armor. And I am going to try to hook up those stats and everything. But kind of the current problem is that when I go in and I set up a custom, so you see here, you have these different percentages that are being added. And I apologize, my webcam view is kind of in the way there. But essentially, I mean, I guess I can do this anywhere. So you have those little percentage values down there in the list. Those are the affixes in their system. and basically you can go create new ones. The problem is that you can't get them to show up in this list. I have been able to get them to show up in the stats list. So if you press the stats list, you'll end up with like a blank space and then a percentage. So you can't actually tell that something has been added. But actually adding the text here, that's what I was mentioning earlier with the naming, or with the string values. Creating those custom ones for this gas mask that says like, okay, you can now enter into darker areas, or whatever fun thing I would want to tie to a gas mask. Maybe you can be around all the toxin guys, so all the toxin no longer affects you or whatever. There's lots of different things you could do with something like this, and then basically dial that up even more if you put on the rest of the hazmat suit. You know, you get continued bonuses that basically say like, you know, you're even more resistant to the different gases in the world and that kind of thing. So there's probably lots of little things you could do there. The challenge is how do you let the players know that that they're having those effects take place. And I guess one last thing before I jump out of here, let me show you guys the backpack system. So I was actually very happy with the backpack system. It's only 4 different backpacks, but I am looking at, I found the value to go and set up the inventory. So I've got this little loot icon for the different backpacks in the world, which I thought was fun. At least I found one that was somewhat related to its actual role in the game. So if we go and I'll get all 4, so you can see all 4 here. But the idea is that as you go through the game, you can potentially find these different backpacks which give you increased loot capacity. And so if we grab these out of here. And I looked at 2 ways of doing it. So either was, because you have this little pack on your back, that's set by this slot over here. So I did set those up as paraglider replacements to see how that looked. And basically, by doing that, you couldn't add the inventory effects to them. So there will be a little bit of clipping here, but essentially the idea is that with like the first one, which actually, how did that get flipped? Okay, bear in mind here. So I don't know how those things got flipped around. So like the first one is like you get some pouches. So you have some pouches on you, and that expands your inventory by a couple of slots kind of thing. Next you find like an actual long bag, which with the backpack you already have kind of just shows like an extension to your pack there. And then as you continue to go, you find like an actual backpack. Again, trying to figure out a way to also possibly just toggle the paraglider as well. So it's basically how this is being bound to the system. So there is clipping right now, but essentially, you know, now you have an extended inventory even more. And then the final one that you find in the world is actually the one the zombies have on, which I love. But then you have this final backpack, which expands your slots even further, obviously. So kind of the idea is that this could slow you down, but then it also expands how much carrying loot you can have in the game. And so definitely for me, a kind of a fun little side thing for the RPG elements in the game. And I'm still trying to balance it out, but I'm excited to get these systems all working and get your guys' feedback on that. Okay guys, I need to start wrapping up here and get out the door for work that time of day. But I appreciate everybody jumping on here and giving your feedback, giving your 2 cents. Thank you for the continued support for the mod and continue to ask questions and get involved with the development. And I'm really excited to get out 1.1 so that you guys can start testing. Again, that will come in its own version of the mod. So it won't actually all be just I Am Legion, but I Am Legion will contain those mods. And so, you know, in the future, I Am Legion will receive updates, but there will also be sub-mods that will be coming out with these different things. So I'm excited to get those out to you guys and get your guys' feedback. Thank you guys again, and I look forward to talking to you guys next time. Hope you guys